Hello guys, Teacher Parson here, back for the card review, and it's the last video of the card reviews because we have reached age 3, and I think if you have reached this far then you know the rules, so we can just start. So again, first you have oil and mechanized agriculture. Sometimes people like to go for oil, especially the AI I've experienced. I think oil is a little bit too greedy. You have not much time to make use out of it, and it's you usually will have dealt with your resource production if you have reached age 3, so either iron or coal, and going for even more in certain circumstances, maybe with if you get impact of production very early, you can go for it, but usually it's not that much use cases for the oil, so I give it a 5. Mechanized agriculture can be good if you had very low food production the whole game. You can pick that up. It's very cheap, only 7 research and 8 resources for each, and with that you have you can basically increase your population every turn with just 1 mechanized agriculture. Then you can also delete your second farm. So if you need more population, if you have good resource production, low population, then you definitely can go for mechanized agriculture, especially with the International Red Cross, the new wonder. It can be really strong and give you quite a lot of culture, so I would say 7, because generally resource and food production, of course, not what you want in the last stage. You want culture. So we get to computers. Computers used to be one of the most important cards, definitely the most important urban building card from age 3, mostly because a lot of the leaders we had in age 3 depended on computers, like Einstein, Sid Meier and Bill Gates all wanted computers. With the new leaders, there are not so many that need the computers, some which are fine with others, some don't even care if you have high culture, science production. So it used to be probably a 9, now depending on which leaders in the game, I would give it an 8, probably. So let's go to multimedia. Multimedia, of course, very good, but often too expensive, because computers you can upgrade from your labs that you have anyway. Multimedia, you often don't have smaller libraries and can't upgrade, and then having 11 resources just lying around is really hard. Of course, with engineering or architecture, you could reduce your cost of that, and if you have really high production, yeah, it really depends on your resource production because they're so expensive. Also, can you really go for these without being punished? I think they don't have the most use cases. If you need culture and it's a high eco game and you don't have to be afraid of military, then of course it's one of the best buildings for that. So I would give it a 6, because it can be good, but doesn't usually catch my eye if it comes up in the card draw, because there are more important cards in age 3. Professional sports was buffed a little bit, gives now 1 strength more. The best thing about professional sports is that it works with so many impacts. There are like 6 or 7 impacts that professional sports works like, of strength, of architecture, of happiness, and there are some others like technology for the card. So this can be really good for impacts. Also very cheap, only 7 science and 7 resources. Also with the new leader Pierre de Coubertin, these get really strong. They give you quite a boost of military, and also you don't have to care about any happy faces anymore. So I usually have an eye out for this. Also works great with Nelson Mandela, so it was definitely buffed a lot in the expansion. So still only give it a 7, because often you will have dealt with your happy face problem already, and on its own it doesn't give you any culture production. Then movies, the theaters are all really expensive to get and have the hidden cost that you have to research them and don't get any real happy faces, because you could have gone for religion, and the movies give you some happy faces but not enough to make the problem disappear. Of course, it's different with Marlene Dietrich. It was really great, but Marlene Dietrich only gives +1 culture per movie, so you want quite a lot of theaters. So I think if you go for Marlene Dietrich, you want the cheaper theaters, especially drama. If you can get 3 or 4 dramas, Marlene Dietrich becomes really strong. Movies basically the same as multimedia. If you have a lot of economy and you need to produce more culture, then of course movies is the card that's designed to fulfill that role. But in a lot of games you don't need that role, so it's a 6 for me as well. You will see that a lot of the urban buildings aren't rated that high for me. Yeah. So let's go for engineering, satellites, military theory, and civil services. The blue technology is of course super strong with a lot of impacts, and I would say that satellites become a little bit worse because there are no more colonies really in the deck. So yeah, the 3 strength can be really nice. It's really cheap for 8 science. If you have the science, it can really work out well. It gives you a big edge and a lot of impacts, and having 3 strength and maybe getting 1 colony from it is nice as well, but only as a bonus. It's not one of the more important blue special technology cards, but if you have the science, it's really nice. The military theory, really important, gives you so much. 5 strength and 3 military actions is super strong for the late game, and catch up quite a lot with this, especially if you want to declare wars and don't have enough military actions. This is definitely a good pickup. Depending on when it comes, if it comes early of age 3, it definitely is super important. Later on it falls off a bit, so I think strategy is still a little bit better, of course depending on how early you can get it, but military theory for me is a 9 because it's really strong. Then civil service also gives you quite a lot, also not so cheap, but if you don't have any of these types, getting 2 more white action civil actions can give you quite a lot of room to play with. Also 3 blue tokens if you have high production but not so many blue tokens can be really important, especially if you want to go for wonders and need the blue tokens for the steps. There are a lot of wonders with quite a few steps in it from age 3, so I would give it an 8. Also these all work really well with impacts, so they are one of the reasons why high science production can pay off a lot. You get quite a big boost from these, where you only need the science to develop them. The engineering can be really effective on certain buildings, like 3 less for the H3 urban buildings, especially movies, multimedia costing only 8, or even professional sports. As you can see, professional sports, -3 is only 4 for professional sports. That's super cheap. Then you can with Pierre de Coubertin get 4 of these for very cheap, and that gives you quite a boost. So engineering, also depending on which urban buildings you want to go for. As I said, the urban buildings generally aren't that high valued by me, because I think there are different things that you want to get instead of them. So engineering as well, you need the urban buildings for that. So it can be really important, give you quite a boost, but I still give it a 7. Because urban buildings generally are not that strong, depending on the game really. So we continue with the military units. There again I want to start off with Air Forces, which is a 10, definitely. If you're going for military push, or your opponent goes for military push, this is so important. It can give you such a big boost in military for very little resources or very little population. So if there's an arms race, you can't go without Air Forces. Then we have the rockets, tank and modern infantry. I would say rocket is the least important because you should have cannons, really. If you don't have cannons, of course rockets become super important, but you don't get any upgrade. If you have cannons, the cannons are enough for every tactic, so I think rockets aren't that important, and I would only give them 6. And then tanks and modern infantry, you only want to pick them up when you don't have the H2 units for this, or if you need them, or even if you have don't have them at all, if you don't have knights or cavalrymen. Same with modern infantry, if you can't even fulfill H2 tactics because you still have warriors, then you pick them up. But usually you want to stay with your lower units and go for air forces with the science that you have. So I would go both of the 7 because it's slightly more likely that you will need them than the rockets. And then the government forms, communism and fundamentalism both were buffed a little bit. I think communism was a little bit cheaper, especially as a revolution, and was a little bit more expensive, and now also produces you one production, one rock, which isn't really that big of a boost. And fundamentalism also changed a little bit, and now gives 6 strength. Also I think it was made a little bit cheaper, not sure about the old costs, because you usually only went for democracy, which is still, in my opinion, the best. The only exception basically is if you need military or military actions, and in that case, if you want to go for big war, are still at only 3 or 4 military actions, then you can't go for wars because then you don't have military actions to build up your military, and in those cases you want fundamentalism. And for that, fundamentalism is better than communism because it also gives you a strength buff. The one rock production isn't really that much. Also the downside of the happy phase, because here you lose the science production, but fundamentalism is basically only for the last push where you want to declare a war and then win that, and then you don't need the science production. So yeah, usual circumstances, get democracy, it's great, I would give it a 9. If you're going for a war and need military actions, go for either of these, where fundamentalism is definitely better for the last push. So I would give this an 8 and communism a 7. And now we have the first yellow cards. Engineering Genius now of course pays 5 less. Used to be pretty okay, but yeah, I'm not sure. As the most of the Engineering Geniuses, it falls off. There are a lot of wonders that you can't really use this on, like International Red Cross, of course you can't use it at all. Then Internet and some of the others where you can't make full use of this. So also a lot of cases where you don't want to build one at all or can't afford it. And yeah, I would only give this a 7 because wonders aren't as important. Sometimes they are super important, sometimes the H3 wonders can win the game. But then the Engineering Genius can make the difference, but often you don't need it, or it doesn't really work with the wonder you want. So I would give it a 7. Revolutionary Idea, my favorite yellow card from H3, it's a 10, no doubt about that. If you are at low science production, these revolutionary ideas can give you enough for that one tech that you need, maybe for the war, maybe it can give you enough for air forces or military theory, or even for a new government type. So these are super important. You always want to pick them up. Patriotism also can be quite important because of the wars. If you declare war and then only have 1 or 2 military actions left, the last military action you get from patriotism can be super important, so I would give it an 8. So now we have efficient upgrade. Efficient upgrade usually comparable with urban growth, but I think urban growth is a little bit more important in H3 because maybe in the last stage you want to get urban buildings that you haven't had before. Efficient upgrade, you need something to upgrade, and depending on how many H1 or 2 urban buildings you have, then efficient upgrade you can't make any use of it. But of course, if you get it early and make use of it for your infrastructure and resource production, maybe it's very useful. Also upgrading like to your computers, your H1 labs or something, that can be very good. But I think urban growth is slightly better, so efficient upgrade an 8, and urban growth a 9, and efficient upgrade a 7, urban growth an 8, in my opinion. Endowment of the arts can be super important, can give you 6 culture. In 1v1 games especially important. If you pick it up, either you or the other player would gain 6 culture from this, so if you make use of it instead of your opponent, that would be 6 culture for you and not for him, so 12 swing. Can be game deciding, and always want to have a look out for that. If you can pick it up, if you can take it away from your opponent, so they don't get the 6 culture for free, give it a 9. Because it can be game deciding, can be very important to get this extra 6 culture, or take it away from the other person. Military build-up, super important card for me, I think, especially because it's 1v1s I mainly play. Having this in hand just gives you this security that you don't have to be afraid of a war, giving you 8 resources in a 2-player game. That's more than an air force. So your opponent always has to calculate, okay, he can push out quite a lot of military if he really wants to. Those also is a 10 for me. Also there's only 1, so have a look out for this. Maybe you can pick it up for 2, take it away from your opponent. Very important. And then reserves, really nice to have. The option to gain food is also really important, because usually you build up your resource production a lot more than your food production, and then using the reserves to get out 1 more unit or 1 more population can be very good. I'll give it an 8 because it costs 2 civil actions, but you have the option to go for either, and in the end civil actions aren't that expensive, and having options is always nice. So now we have the old leaders, and we start with Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi is like a small counter card. If you have high culture production or plan to go for that, and your opponent has very little military actions, you can deny him the wars. That's basically the goal. You have to be careful because of military theory. If he picks that up, then suddenly your bonus isn't relevant anymore, or can be. So he's great if your opponent has very little military actions, and then you can also deny the last military actions he could get. Very unique leader, very situational, can be very important in games. Some games he can be deciding, but a lot of the times he's not the greatest leader. Hard to rate such a leader because, yeah, I'll give them a 6 because in certain situations he's super strong, but you always have to keep in mind that you can't just pick him up for fun. So Bill Gates used to be my favorite. I think there are a lot of situations where he can actually turn the game around completely. If you get him early in H3, then get early computers, and suddenly you go from 3, 4, 5 resource production to over 10 just by getting Bill Gates, and having then super high resource production, also super high science production, and you can convert that in anything you want. So going for high military, you can defend against wars, you can go for high culture production. I'll give it a 9. I think they should have nerfed him just a little bit. The score culture equal to the additional production is quite high often. I think that's a bonus he doesn't really need. Maybe just have it like some others, at the highest you have scores just cut the culture, so you can get up to 3 culture and not 12 as it is. That's a little bit too strong in my opinion. I would have hoped they nerfed that, but until now it's really fine. I think I haven't had those games where I thought, okay, he's just too strong. Not sure about that. Sid Meier can be really strong, obviously, but he takes away science from you and gives you culture for that, and doesn't give you anything else. So if like your opponent committed to Gandhi, and then you have Sid Meier plus computers, you get super high culture production. But you always have to keep in mind that he doesn't give you anything but culture, and most of the other leaders gives you something else at least. Sid Meier also needs quite a lot of computers. With scientific method he is okay, but he really wants the computers, so I would give him a 7. Then Churchill is super versatile, very good. Producing 3 culture if you want is, I would say, average. More than Gandhi. Einstein sometimes produces can develop more than 1, so Einstein I would say is between 3 and 6 per turn. Chaplin can only be 4, so definitely fine with the culture production, and also having this additional security that you can go for military if you really need to. Sometimes he can be deciding if you can get air forces that turn or not, and that he's super important. It's one of the best leaders to just pick him up. He's an 8 for me, especially if he comes early and you just say, okay, I don't know where this game is going, but I can pick up Churchill in every situation. He will be at least good. Now Einstein, Albert Einstein, not one of my favorites. He loses a little bit of science and a little bit of culture. But most of the time the science boost isn't that significant. If you have 2 or 3 computers and produce 15, then the additional 3 that you get really isn't that important. And then of course scoring culture is really nice, but he's only, as I said, 3 to 6. So Maya with that many computers is way more, and Bill Gates can also result in more culture because of the resources he gives you. So I would say if you go for computers, Sid Meier or Bill Gates are definitely better than Einstein, so I would give Einstein a 6. Now Charlie Chaplin, as I said, the most he can produce is 4 culture and then give you 2 happy faces. Can be good with Hollywood because the bonus counts for that, but other than that, only if you really need happy faces you can take him, and you have a theater already and a high level theater. If you only have drama, he doesn't give you much. Even with movies he doesn't give you much, only 4 culture production and some happy faces. So yeah, I would only pick him up if you really need those happy faces and have a theater. So not that versatile, one of my least favorite leaders in the game. We'll only give him a 5, maybe even 4. Yeah, we'll only give him a 4 actually. So the wonders, fast food chains and spaceflight. These 2 are generally great just to have, they always score something. Like fast food chains will be at least around 15, can go over 20 even. Getting that culture boost is really good, can be very game deciding. Spaceflight also gives you at least, I would say, the least it gave me probably was 14, 15, around that. Most of the time more, and sometimes it can go crazy and give you like 13. So I would say that both of them are very versatile. In every game set you can go for these. Sometimes they will give you more, but at least they will always give you something, not like Hollywood or internet where you sometimes get almost nothing. So I would say Spaceflight has a little bit more potential, so I could give it a 9, and Fast Food Chains I would give an 8, because both of them are really good, but Spaceflight is a little bit better. It also has really weird costs, which is a small downside, but I still think it's slightly better than Hollywood. Yeah, you need really a lot of theaters or libraries, so there are certain games, of course, with super high culture production at the end, where you have 3 movies, 3 multimedia, and it can go crazy and give you so much culture. But most of the times you won't have such games, so often it will give you almost nothing, or at least for me in my experience. So I will only give it a 5. The internet is a little bit the same, but at least it gives you culture for your computers. Also has a lot of steps, but I still think it's slightly better than Hollywood, and I will give it a 6. So now we get to the new leaders and wonders. First we have Marie Curie Sklodowska. The best mind produces science equal to its level. Your best lab gives you strength equal to its level. Sklodowska produces culture equal to the better of those two. So she's a little bit of an all-rounder, giving you some science, some strength, and some culture. But only if you have high minds and high labs. So I would say most of the time you have iron, and then I will give her the benefit of the doubt and also give her computers. So she produces 1 science, 3 strength, and 3 culture, which is definitely okay, which in that case is even better than Churchill maybe, but in a lot of games she won't give you as much if you don't have computers, and yeah, it's a little bit hard to tell how good she really is. I haven't picked up that much because I usually don't have the highest minds and don't go for computers in my recent games, because I feel like you can get away with not taking them. But she definitely has potential, and would give her a 7, really depending on which minds and labs you have. And Marlene Dietrich is one of my favorite new leaders. Each of your best theaters produce an extra culture and 1 happy face. One of your infantry, cavalry, or artillery units count twice for purpose of tactics. So she's, first I thought, okay, she's not that great, but in my recent games I really like her. She, excuse me, she gives you a strength bonus, which is always nice for an H3 leader, and then also she gives you culture production. I feel the best combo with her is getting opera. So if I can take, not opera, drama. If there's in the HA the drama and I can pick it up, I usually look, is Marlene Dietrich in the game? And if she is, then I really want to pick that up, because getting that early drama and then producing a lot of culture, and then getting Marlene Dietrich, she becomes super good. If you have like 2 or 3 dramas, she gives you 3 extra culture, 3 happy faces, and also her strength bonus. So yeah, definitely like her. I will give her an 8, because if you don't have any theaters, she's not that great. But you have to play, if you want to take her, then you have to, in my opinion, get drama or opera. Going for movies, you need quite a lot. She only gives +1 for each, so the smaller theaters are definitely better for her. Then Steve Jobs. Your best lab gives you happy faces equal to its level. Whenever you develop a technology, you may pay 1 resource to score 4. So a little bit different and similar to Albert Einstein. you get happy faces instead of science, which can be really good. If you haven't if you didn't get rid of your happy face problem before, then he's quite good. If you get computers, and then you can, Einstein was 3 to 6, Steve Jobs is 4 to 8, I would say, but you also have to pay some resources because Apple products are more expensive, of course. So I'm not so sure about him. Usually I don't need happy faces, or if I do, I get other stuff. I think in more player games he definitely can be good. Basically only if you have computers and need the happy faces and have enough resources. So I think he's not that, you can't use him as freely as Einstein, but he also gives you more in the right circumstances. Not one of my favorites. I would rate him the same as Albert Einstein, also a 6. Because he's an extreme version of Albert Einstein, that he needs specific circumstances even more than Einstein, but if he's in the right circumstances, then he's stronger. So Nelson Mandela. If you have no discontent worker, taking this card costs 3 civil actions more. And at the end of your turn, score 1 culture for each surplus happy face, and also giving you 1 civil action and 2 culture. So first it was a little bit, I felt it was weird that he would cost more if you have discontent workers, but that's really an interesting mechanic. If you have discontent workers, you can pick them up, then go for professional sports maybe, and suddenly you have a lot of surplus happy faces. And then he can really go crazy. If you don't have that much population, you can have 4, maybe 5 surplus happy faces, and he produces you 7 culture and also gives you 1 civil action. So I really like that he can give you very high culture production in circumstances where usually you don't have that culture production. Like a lot of the others only give you culture if you already have high culture production, like with theaters or libraries, and he gives you another way to score a lot of culture, where you don't have to need to have these movies and theaters or other buildings. So I really like that. I think it can be super strong if all of a sudden you get this high culture production out of nothing, basically. So I'll give it a 7. Then Pierre de Coubertin. Each of your arenas produces 2 culture. Once per game before your political action, you may declare the Olympic Games. Score 8 culture, and until the start of your next turn, whoever plays a war or aggression loses 8 culture. So you get 8 culture for free, basically. So he's really good to pick up in the end if you have a good H2 leader, and then you see, okay, I want to swap him out finally, there's not a lot of turns left. Then Pierre is really good because it gives him this one-time boost of 8 culture, which is quite a lot. And then also punishes players who want to play aggressions against you or anyone really. So that declaring Olympic Games, first of all, is super cool, and also can be quite strong. And then also giving your arenas 2 culture production, which makes arenas super strong. Also note that it doesn't matter which level the arenas are, so if you have 4 of the, what's it called, bread and circuses or something, you also get 8 culture production, which is really crazy. So I also like him quite a lot, and he's super fun to play. He's one of the most interesting leaders to play. Also really strong, I feel, especially with this 8 culture you can get just as a bonus, so we'll give him an 8 as well. Then Iron Flaming. Your best library and theater produce extra culture equal to their levels. At the beginning of your political phase, you may look at one player's military cards. You cannot choose the same player on 2 consecutive turns. So his special ability, I honestly don't have much use for that. It can be important, but especially in one-player games you only get that every second turn. Maybe you see which impacts he wants to play and can react accordingly. Maybe you see if he has a war or he doesn't, or if he can defend against your aggression. Can have uses, but it's not really strong, it's just a really little bonus. And then he can produce up to 6 culture, but most of the time it will be less. It will be only 3 if you only have movies, or maybe if you have very high levels of your library and theaters. It can give you 4 or 5, but having both multimedia and movies is very rare. It's really expensive to go for that, and then he only gives you 6 culture production. Then there are other leaders that can give you more, like Sid Meier, and yeah, so not a big fan of Ein Fleming. Will get a 5 from me. It's a little bit comparable to Charlie Chaplin, but not really, I don't know. So the new wonders. Empire State Building. Compare your science, everything. Production with your opponents. For each you have higher than anyone else, score 9 culture. This is a 4-player version, and 2-player version you get 7 for each one where you are stronger. So I would say this usually ends up being like 18 in the 4-player game, and if you have, because more than 2 where you have the most, should be very unlikely unless you're winning anyway. And then in 2-player games maybe you can get 3, and then you have 21. If you only have 2, then you're only at 14. So it feels like you usually will get something out of it, but then there's this really strange cost, 17. Only 1 civil action, that is nice, even though you maybe have engineering or any of the others, where it doesn't really matter that you only have 1 step, because you don't have to pay the other steps anyway. And you first of all have to have these 17 resources all at once. So with high resource production, of course it can pay it off, but that's basically every wonder pays off in H3 if you have high resource production. So I feel this 17 and 1 is big concern for this wonder, and I will only give it a 6, because it's really hard to build and then doesn't give you that much. If it gives you quite a lot, then of course it's a really good wonder, but I don't feel like that is too often. Then United Nations. Score 4 culture for each wonder, each special blue technology, or each type of urban building you have, whichever is the highest. You may reveal an H3 event from your hand. Evaluate it immediately, then return it to your hand. So you score for each of your what I just read. So most of the times it's either 12 or 16. I don't know if I've seen more, maybe with wonders. If you have 5 wonders and you get 20, you can't have more than 4 blue technologies, and having more than 4 different urban buildings is really rare. Maybe if you have what's he called, the H2 leader, who can give you quite a lot of different urban buildings, then you can get more. But then also there's the H3 event, which can also be if you are strong at some impacts, and then you can get like 10, maybe even sometimes even more. If you have only like impact of strength, then you get 10 and the other gets 0, then it's really strong. Then it gives you your 12, 16, maybe, let's say average 16 plus 10, and then it's 26, also nice cost. 8 is manageable, definitely, and 2 steps, then it's nice. So better building costs than fast food chains most of the time. So yeah, this can be super strong, of course, depending on if you have impacts on your hand that you would like to evaluate, so we'll give it an 8. And then the International Red Cross. Other players may also work on this wonder. Unlike you, they are limited to 1 stage per turn. For each stage, the player who built it immediately scores 6 culture. When completed, you score 1 for each colony in play. And there's 5 steps, so 30 culture you can score with this, plus 1 for each colony. If you have very much food, of course it costs food to build this. If you have quite a lot of food and can take it and finish it immediately, is super strong. It's not too expensive food-wise, and you get 30 from it, and maybe a few for the colonies, depending on how many colonies are in there. If you only build 4 of the steps, or if you take it and then can't finish it, or can't even build a lot of steps, and want to do it next turn, in 2-player games of course only 1 will be gone, but in 4-player games, if 3 players other than you build on it, then more than half of it is suddenly gone, and you had to pay these civil actions to take it. So with high food production, it's great. If you don't have that, or only plan on going for high food after you have this finish, or after you have taken this, it can be quite risky because the others can score as well. I'll give this 7 overall. Yeah, it needs quite a lot of planning, I think. But can be really strong. Also, I really like the design of it, giving you uses for your food, makes mechanized agriculture way better. In other cases, it's often food is not that important in the end anymore, so you get some use out of it. So I really like this card overall. Then the Manhattan Project. You immediately score culture equal to your science rating, and then you gain 13 strength. 13 is quite a lot, can be very important. Also has nice building cost, only costing 14 in 3 steps, which is basically the perfect distribution. Of course you have to make some use out of the 13 strength you gain. The science rating often will be pretty low, can of course go quite high with that. If you have 3 or 4 computers even, then scoring 20 is enough for a wonder just like that. But also the strength, that makes it really good. And yeah, maybe sometimes, in my experience, it hasn't been that strong because I usually don't go for very high science rating in the end without computers. But with computers, I think this is really, really strong, and I would give it an 8 as well. So yeah, these are the last of the cards. I had really much a great time reviewing all these cards. I hope you enjoyed seeing everything. I again hope you can comment on this video what your thoughts are, what do you think about the cards, how you play this game, because this game of course is really, everyone plays it a little bit different. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and if you want anything certain special from me for my next videos, I haven't made my mind up yet what videos I want to do next. If you have any suggestions, let me know. I'm open to everything, and hope you have a great day.